evening.
One thing I wanted to ask. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. That's
It's
all I
always for
asked.
the committee meetings, and well, not always, but mostly for the committee meetings, never for either the regular meeting or the work session.
Okay. Something I observed that I did not know if you were aware of or not. On the website, the treasurer's report, August, September, and October all have a treasurer's report that is dated for November and December. November 30th, 2021 and December 31st, 2021. Okay, yeah, all from August, September, October, November, and December, all are the same exact report. Okay, just so that you know that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, we were talking earlier, somebody was speaking about money. And we have performance assessments that I was looking through for the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. And I thought it was very strange that the 3 performance assessments that were up for the superintendent were all exactly identical, but dated different years. Not a word was different. Not one word. But they all had different dates. I have a copy of it. And the assistant superintendent, hers is exactly the same as Mr. Wood's. Exactly. No difference whatsoever. Now, I was on the website for the schools, and the U.S. Department of State, and their performance assessment, their evaluation for the school superintendent, was 44 pages long. This evaluation is 4 pages long. That's a huge difference. Huge difference. So I'm not understanding that at all. Don't understand why it's the same assessment 3 times in a row, no difference in wording, and why the assistant superintendent would be the same thing. And I don't understand why this is, it just seems like it's, I don't know. I don't think that's a mistake. I don't see it as a mistake. So, the performance assessments, I went on greatschools.org and I saw that our school quality is 75% below average, and our student progress is 67% below average. District revenue was $65 million, but state average was $47 million. Okay, so that's a difference of $18 million. So people are talking about how much we need money, but we're talking about having $18 million more than average. Now, when you look at the state average per student, it's $17 million, and the state average per, or the average per student for our district is $16 million. So that's $729 less per student. Now, if you look at
One last thing I'd like to say is that our superintendent, our assistant superintendent is that our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, and Mr. Cooney are all getting raises of average of 9%. 9%. 9% raise is ridiculous. And so people need to start paying attention to how much money is being spent and where it's being spent.
Ms. Vicki Bolger.
Hello, my name is Nikki Bolger. I'm a resident of Lower Oxford Township and a parent of a current kindergarten student. Before I move on to addressing Jennifer K's comments during recent board meetings, I would like to point out that during the January 11th work session, Michael Blessington was unaware that we have 6 schools, as he thought we had 4. At a bare minimum, board members should know how many schools we have, especially if they're sitting on a curriculum committee or approving budgets and policies. Please do better if you're going to remain on this board. In regards to Jennifer Key's comments, I want to reiterate that we are not mad that she asked questions about a policy, about taxes, about test scores. We are upset that she about a policy, about taxes, about test scores. We are upset that she constantly referred to children as illegal. They're children. Why do they need to be labeled as anything other than children? Being in this country without documentation is not a criminal offense, and children are by no means at fault for how they arrived here. She was told multiple times that the school cannot legally ask immigration status. I would also like to point out that every home in this district pays taxes, whether the occupants own or rent, whether there are 0 or many children living in the home. The owner of the home still pays taxes. When talking about test scores, she said, is it the curriculum or is it that we have a population of students right now? And then she was cut off. She also said, if we are accepting those people, those will very much drive down, again, additional numbers on our scores. The if in that statement tells me that she was considering not accepting them, which, legality aside, how can any human decide if they want to deny a child an education? She was putting test scores above living, breathing children in our district who need an education. All kids are more than test scores. As a taxpayer, I want every child, no matter how they arrived here, to receive the help and education that they need. If it means that my child receives a few less programs in school, so be it. My child is very privileged, as am I, as are most of us, compared to the families that decided it was best to uproot their lives and risk everything to get their kids a better life in this country. Have some empathy. My young son was very proud that they are teaching his friend and classmate English, and it warmed my heart to see his love and compassion towards his friend. No matter your views on immigration, it should be handled at the state and federal level, not Oxford Area School District. Our district should focus on educating all students in our district. Jennifer Keys also many times during the last 2 meetings mentioned that the community needed to know when homeless or undocumented children are accepted to our schools. Why? Why does she need to know that? I urge our administration to not disclose any personal or identifiable student information to any member of the school board, especially if there's a risk that they will disclose that information to the public. There are far more serious issues that weren't being brought to the community's attention, and a child's immigration status is not one of them. As I end this, I will leave you with the words of Giselle Barretto Fetterman, the Second Lady of Pennsylvania, addressing Jennifer Key's comments. Fetterman said, and I quote, "As someone who was one of those people and who grew up as an undocumented child, I can only imagine what my outcome would have been had the school board members actively been rooting against my success. Good people of Oxford, please run for school board." End quote. And with that, I once again ask Jennifer Keys to resign.
I'm going to take this time right now just to correct incorrect comments. Normally we stay silent, we listen, but this has been an ongoing issue. First off, to compare our district with a website, speaking to Mrs. Weiker's comments, greatschool.org. We're not familiar with those websites. As I think you saw today or this evening at this meeting, Assistant Superintendent Billings-Jones laid out the good things that are happening in this school district according to our state standardized test scores. Additionally, I'd like to address the administration raises that was given an incorrect percentage, far above what any of my colleagues, Mr. Cooney or Dr. Billings-Jones or myself, actually made. And third, the evaluation is a compilation. And you could go back to the almost 10 years that I was here. The compilation is from a detailed evaluation. The compilation is what is required by state code, and I believe those compilations have proficient throughout the compilation for the balance of the years. So, taking this time just to correct some incorrect statements because they've been occurring, and I believe that we need to add a voice to the correct statements. So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Ms. Bolger, for your comments. Ms. Ronnie Klutz.
Good evening. My name is Ronnie Lutz. I'm from East Nottingham Township. And I'm here this evening in the presence of witnesses to serve Mr. Robert Tango with a letter of intent to file a claim against his surety bond for violating 13 federal and international codes. Firstly, we cite examples of board actions that are at the least of good judgment in its responsibilities to ensure the welfare of children and families, at most, are in legal opposition to their oaths of office and stated governing responsibilities and authorities. Most of the school board members voted December 7th to recommit for an additional 6 months to the required federal health and safety plan that is attached to the ESSER 3 funding. Funding which forfeits children and parents' constitutional rights and the right of parents to make decisions regarding their children's medical health and or treatment. Superintendent Woods violated federal and state application requirements for ESSER 3 funding by not engaging stakeholders prior to submitting the application. School board members moved forward and voted on health and safety plan without exercising their own due diligence on this family impacting critically important plan placed before them for enactment. School board members did not demand and were indeed denied access by Superintendent Woods to the proposed health and safety plan prior to the meeting at which it was voted upon. School board members did not vote to table the vote on the health and safety plan, so the new school board members could have an opportunity to inform themselves of the details of the plan. Director Klaus voted for the plan without having read it. Director Dean threatened stakeholders with pushbacks for speaking out in opposition. School board members should be held accountable for its approval of superintendent's annual review and subsequent salary increases, which have been from $152,000 at hiring to a current $227,000, with at the very least test scores of students have plummeted 40%. Secondly, we cite the following examples of gross misconduct, incompetence, and/or neglect of duty on the part of Superintendent Woods relating to the health and safety plan and homeless policy 7320 revisions. Superintendent offered to fool stakeholders by suggesting there be 2 health and safety plans, one for submission to the federal government that would carry the authority to take action against the children and families, and one that would satisfy the stakeholders. This is a gross infraction of his lawful duties. Superintendent Woods withheld the information that the 21 high school homeless students were placed by Homeland Security. The school board did not update the homeless policy 7320 as recommended in the homeless monitoring audit of April 2021, and must do so now to comply with federal ESSA updated verbiage to make acceptance of these 21 high school homeless students allowable. Superintendent Woods requested that the board approve his being made the sole party responsible for the homeless students that attend Oxford area high school. Voters elect school board members from within our community for a reason, to offer balance, integrity, and perspective when approaching all matters relating to the education of our district's children. To do as suggested, making Mr. Woods sole overseer of a particular block of students would prevent the school board members from performing their own required duties, holding them in conflict with their oaths of office and descriptions of responsibilities. That which would be even uttered to the board for suggestion, for consideration, speaks volumes to superintendent's overall intent and lack of character. This would allow for achievement standards appear greater than they truly are. Such an overreach supplements the school board's authority and goals of governing, and combined with above-mentioned shortfalls is sufficient to demand his immediate removal. Mr. Ty, in his letter to the community, contributed to and perpetrated the vilification and created racist narrative surrounding
Thank you, Ms. Lutz. Jim Shaw.
It's Shan.
Oh, Shane.
Hi, my name is Shan from East Nottingham Township. I have a little thing written here, and I don't know whether I'm going to use it or not, or whether I'm just going to take up your time, because I want you to know that this is never going to go away. Ms. Keys, you are a stain on our school and our community. And I know I'm supposed to address you, I'll look at you, but just so we're aware. Okay. Well, unfortunately, so I'll talk to you. You guys are all going to have to suffer because of this. You see this crowd, we are not going anywhere. So everyone can get used to these long meetings and people being here all day long. I can't even imagine that it's up for question that the wife of a pedophile is on our school board. It is factual.
But it is a personal attack that you can't have it here.
We understand. Understood. Then we'll just go with, you are clearly resentful. You have no business making any decision for any child.
Please, you address me, and please just stay away from any name calling.
I'm just going to stand here for the next 3.5 minutes. If anybody is willing to stand with me, who wants to see Ms. Keys resign, please do so now.
You're going to allow this? What about the rules?
We're just going to be here for the next 3.5
One more
minutes, folks.
stake in the coffin.
I appreciate you standing with me. Make sure the whole community gets to see that.
One minute, Mr. Shannon.
Thank you, sir. We can and will do this as long as you keep your seat. And to all of you, I hope you have the day you deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Lizzie Evans Ralston.
Hi, hello, Mr. Hi, and Mr. Woods. My name is Lizzie Evans Ralston, and I'm a resident of Oxford Borough West, got it right this time, as well as a junior at Oxford Area High School. I have lived and attended school in the Oxford Area School District for my entire life, and I am incredibly thankful for the opportunities it has provided me. I've been accepted into the ACP program. I achieved high grades and am achieving high grades and challenging myself in various AP classes and applying myself in new ways to the music department and various extracurricular activities. I have been able to succeed and grow as a student. And I could not be more thankful for the opportunities I have and the way in which my wonderful teachers have challenged me in order to further my education. It is because of the school district that I remain who I am today, which is why I was so heartbroken to hear the comments made at the last school board meeting. The thought of another student being denied the same opportunities that I have simply because of something as trivial as perceived test scores is abhorrent and absolutely unjust. The students being accused all came to America to have opportunities, and all students deserve a right to an education. All children deserve to be given a chance to succeed. It is appalling that someone could look at any child and blame them for low test scores, all while suggesting that perhaps because of the hand they have been dealt, they don't deserve the same opportunities that I have been given as someone who has opted out of almost every standardized test those scores are based on. So I have earned a 0 on every score those tests. They have all earned higher scores than I will ever have on any of those tests. Besides the exams I have had to graduate. It is one of my core beliefs that if the right to education is not given to one of us, it is not given to all of us. And as long as I'm concerned, those students are members of the Oxford Area School District, and they are my friends, my classmates, and my equals. No matter who they are, no matter where they came from, and no matter how they came here, they deserve exactly what I have been given because they are students too. And I don't feel comfortable going to a school whose board upholds these opinions because this is a representative body that does not represent the core values of me or many of my classmates, the people who actually attend the schools that you reflect, make decisions on behalf of, and are supposed to ally with and support In fact, all of us have learned at one point or another about Thomas Paine, the revolutionary author of Common Sense and a founding father of these United States, who helped spur the American Revolutionary War, in which, you may recall, we earned our independence from Britain almost 200 years ago. Well, a little over 200 years ago. It was he who said, "Whatever is my right as a man is also the right of another, and it becomes my duty to guarantee as well as to possess." Thank you for your time.
Is it Evans Ralston or Ralston? Thank you, Ms. Evans Ralston. Andrea Evans?
Good evening, Mr. Woods and Mr. Ty. So, Lizzie's my daughter. And I don't know if I can top that, Lizzie, but just wanted to put in my 2 cents. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to speak. My name is Andrea Evans. I'm a resident of Oxford Borough West and a parent of both an alumni and a current student of the school district. In fact, many people present tonight know my kids because they have both taken advantage of the many opportunities offered through the school district. Indeed, there are people present in this very room tonight who have nurtured, challenged, and encouraged my children on their journey through an academic life paved with opportunity. As a mother, I am close to the end of this journey. Imagine, as a mother, the fury of hearing elected representatives espouse the belief that not all students should be treated the same, that a targeted group of children would be treated in a manner excluding them from the opportunity that my children benefited from. Opportunity that allowed my own children to flourish, as you've seen here tonight more than once. So, of course, mothers of those targeted children, I feel your fury, and that is why I'm here tonight. School board directors. Among you are directors not invested in being the stewards of opportunity for all of the students in the Oxford area school district. Their message is strongly worded with terms like pretend to care about the students. Let that sink in. Pretend to care about the students. Think about that the next time you're poring over policy at night, that is what's being said. Pretend to care about these students, my children, our children. If you, as directors, truly care about our students and want them on a journey on a path forged with opportunity, stand with us, furious mothers and fathers, as we ask for the resignation of the directors not committed to the success of each and every child in the school district. Thank you.
Jim Labor. Ms. Lauren Rubino.
My name is Lauren Rubino from Lower Oxford Township. I hate public speaking. I despise it. While I was trying to decide if this was something I should do, my second grader told me about a new student in his school. He said they don't speak English and they're from another country. My son said, "Mommy, that must be so scary." Oddly enough, he never mentioned task force. My 8-year-old is able to recognize the turmoil that these children are going through, so I figured a few minutes of my own discomfort was worth it. I'm here for those students. I am a nurse. It is my job to take care of my patients. It does not matter who they are, what they look like, where they come from, or what language they speak. Their care is my responsibility. When I have a patient who does not speak English, I learn how to say hello and goodbye in their language. Why? Because I want them to feel welcome and safe during an uncertain time. While I do not speak their language, I want them to know that I accept them, and my care for them will not falter due to the language barrier. It is my job to take care of all my patients the same way. All of the children of the Oxford Area School District are like your patients. It is your job to keep them safe and make sure that they get the education they deserve while they are in your care. It is your job to take care of all the students the same way, regardless of your opinions on how they got here. Some of you have shown through your recent actions that you don't see all of the students as your responsibility. Jennifer Kaye's comments at the January 18th meeting and the recent policy committee meeting have proven that where children come from is more important to her than their education. There are many issues with this, but the worst part is that it proves that she has failed to do her job. I have learned a lot of things in my 15-year career as a nurse. I've learned to do full assessments, learned to take vital signs. I've also learned hello and goodbye in a few different languages. So I ask you to follow my lead, Mrs. Case. Assess the situation in this room. Put your finger on the pulse of the community and learn to say adios.
I'm sorry, it looks like Owen Aliyito, right? How do I pronounce that?
Alioto.
Yes, Alioto is correct.
Thank you.
I am Owen. I'm a high school senior at Oxford Area High School. And I'll try to keep this brief. As a student at Oxford Area High School, I remember one image very clearly. It was a black and white picture from the 50s of a white protester screaming in the face of a black child holding a sign. I don't remember the exact words of it, but the message was clear: you are not welcome here. That picture is still being published in books and put up in museums across America, and that's how those people will be remembered forever. Ms. Keyes, this is how you will be remembered forever, by saying you are not welcome to the Latina children of our community. And I'd like you to think about that.
Jill Gallagher.
Good evening. My name is Jill Gallagher. I have 2 children enrolled in the school district. I live in East Nottingham Township. And tonight I'm here to ask Jennifer Case to resign. It would seem like Jennifer is merely a soldier and her husband's in person. They have started a group called the Oxford Area Patriots, where they meet at their church and they discuss issues, which I'm not sure because they discuss them in private, not with all stakeholders, which is actually against the district's policy as far as the bylaws go. I have some photographs I have printed up off of Facebook, different comments regarding their group, and I have our district's policy. And I have a violation of 5 different policies in our bylaws, from the comments that she had made at the January 18th meeting, that she said again at the February 8th meeting, and that her husband has posted online. I feel like she has surrendered her responsibility to the school board by posting online under her husband's name, which there is an example here. I will give this to you guys to look over. If she still refuses to resign, I am asking that the school board please review this and make sure that she is not in violation of any more bylaws. Before I close out my speech, I would like to address Mr. Blessington. I have not found anything.
You're not supposed to address it.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Well, I would just like to say that I haven't found anything as far as breaking the rules go, but I have seen enough to make my stomach turn, and I'm just begging you to be more sensitive and thoughtful in the future with your public image and the words that you use. Kids first, progress, and most importantly, unity is what we should be here for. Thank you.
My name's Amanda Jackson. I'm from West Nottingham Township. I've been a taxpayer and I've voted in our district for almost 30 years. I voted for Jen Kays in our last local election, and I wanted to stand up and show some support for her. A few meetings ago, she did what she was elected to do, and that was to ask hard questions. Since then, I've watched some local Facebook groups with self-elected administrators allow a steady stream of online bullying of Jen and her family to take place. And not just Jen and her family, but actually anyone who attempted to speak up in her defense. My guess is that none of these people who are currently enraged and highly offended on social media and actually here today voted for Jen. These are probably people who opposed her from the beginning. The comments that she made a few meetings ago were taken out of context and misconstrued into something that they unfairly framed as racist. This group of Facebook administrators used their local moms and Oxford message board social media platforms to push their personal political agendas. They started a change.org petition that got thousands of signatures, and that sounds really impressive, except most of those signatures were from people who don't live in Oxford. After having several conversations with a handful of local people about the Jen Kays incident, I would ask them, do you really think Jen was insinuating that poor students and immigrant students aren't smart?
Yes.
No.
All right, sorry.
Everyone else, and we will not have that type of outburst, please.
Thank you. I would also ask them if they felt like she really thought that Oxford should not provide an education for them, or that she is a flat-out racist. All of the responses were no, actually. So everyone understood the point that she was attempting to make at that meeting. But their issue was that her word choice was bad when referring to the specific groups of children as those people. So this is the precedence we are allowing in our community, that regardless of intent, a poor choice of words will ignite a smear campaign on social media. It will spark investigations into your extended family members, and most importantly, it now justifies online harassment and bullying. Even just as a public supporter of Jen's, I have found myself being a target of online bullying. People were leaving comments on my Facebook page from Texas, from Kentucky, even from Poland, okay, in response to Jen Kays. I've had a man pull pictures of my family to make a viral TikTok video presenting me as a racist. So I can only imagine the nightmare that Jen and her family have been put through. And for what? For asking hard questions? For a poor use of words? As parents, we encourage our children to be strong and be bold and to take a stand against bullying when they see it. And that's why I came here to support Jen tonight. Our children are watching. Why do kids bully? It's because they see adults bullying. That's why. So as a board, you need to focus on the needs of our students and educators in the school system, not hyper-focus on a poor choice of words or the opinions of a few social media groups. You need to allow for hard, uncomfortable questions to be asked, and realize that each of you are here and elected from people who live in your school district. Not people in Kennett, not people in Avongrove, not people in Rising Sun, but Oxford voters. So please, stop the bullying, support one another, ignore the social media hype, and just focus on getting the work done. And I have to say, I am so disappointed that you would allow that nonsense that happened to actually occur. And to me, that was bullying on your part.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
And it's also against the rules.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mrs. Jennifer Warren and Mr. Kevin Warren are on the list, but I do believe you wanted to speak just at the agenda, beginning of the agenda?
I did.
Okay. Oh. Mr. Kevin Warren.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Warren. I'm in Elk Township. It's my understanding that some directors have changes they want to make to the health and safety plan, and also that having an adequate safety plan is a requirement for the ESSER grant. As an engineer, one of the ways we make sense of complex problems is to define the project, the boundaries that we're dealing with. And what are the outcomes that we absolutely need, and what are the really requirements, and then what are the other benefits that would be nice to have. So say we're discussing, we're building a new school, the nice to haves would be things like minimizing the construction cost or having better vocational facilities. And these kinds of things are often in conflict as a balancing act where we're getting feedback from stakeholders, people feel passionately about different sides of it, and you've got to evaluate those trade-offs. But unlike the nice to haves, any project has a list of strict requirements, the must-haves. Beyond just meeting the requirements of the law, those would include meeting the requirements of different funding sources. So for that new school, we could be getting a grant as long as we comply with best practices, say around the American with Disabilities Act. You might have, of course, your local QAnon Karen who read that the ADA was some kind of plot, but as long as it was cost effective, any professional would meet those grant requirements and take the money. Now, where this applies is, I think most of you, when you're looking at the health and safety plan, are trying to find that balance between competing objectives. Right? On the one side, we've got this objective of minimizing dangers to the vulnerable in our community. On the other side, there's the objective of minimizing inconvenience to students and to families that are created from safety measures like masks and quarantines. But you also need to keep in mind there's strict requirements. And I think in this case, it's complying with the federal requirements, otherwise you could jeopardize that $6 million that Oxford cannot afford to lose. There's nothing really very complex about that, except I think we have some stakeholders where rejecting the grant is the goal. They want Oxford to make this huge financial sacrifice in order to further some imagined war against tyranny. No logical justification is provided for jeopardizing this money, only a string of slippery slope fallacies. Now, I'm confident that none of you believe that the CDC could decide to seize our children and keep them in prison for 10 days, or that George Soros is behind all of this recent concern in the community, or that children need to have supplies in case they're imprisoned for days, or that the county might use our parking lots to force children to be vaccinated. I think you all know that these arguments are not logical reasons to put $6 million in jeopardy. Maybe there is a logical argument for jeopardizing that money, but I have not heard it yet. And this is not a conservative versus liberal or a Democrat versus Republican issue. This is an issue of staying grounded in rational reality rather than indulging in paranoid delusions. I'm not implying that any of you buy into that sort of thinking, but I'm here because there's a danger in hearing something over and over. It can become normalized, and pretty soon the unthinkable becomes thinkable. Please don't let it. In your debate about the plan, work to find a balance between the objective of safety and the objective of convenience. I think everyone in this room would find a different balance, but you'll be doing your jobs well as long as you focus on finding that balance while you stay within the federal requirements for the grant. Thank you.
Is that a J, Janelle Dewars? Davies?
Janelle Davies?
Yes. I'm sorry.
It's
reason I typed this. Good evening, Mr. Ty and members of the board. My name is Tennille Louise. I reside in Upper Oxford Township. I'm a mother of 4 students in this district, and though I don't regularly attend board meetings, I am otherwise fully immersed in their educational experience here in Oxford. I won't bore you with the list. It might take 5 minutes. I loosely follow what's going on in this board, but have mostly felt that I could trust that our board has the best interest of students at heart. When I've stepped in and written letters to the board on several occasions and attended a handful of meetings, mostly via Zoom, it has always been with a concern for equitable education for all students. To understand why that's so important to me, you may be interested to know that I have spent every spring and summer since 2010 running the Nottingham Presbyterian Church Back to School Fair. We have given between 300 and 900 to 1,000 students a year their grade-specific school supplies that are needed. On that day, the kids have also sometimes walked away with a new haircut, new to them clothes, and access to family resource agencies on the spot. I'm sorry. I've met families who've just arrived to our community, and sometimes with the help of an interpreter, sometimes through their own children, sometimes struggling really hard to remember my Spanish 3 from high school. I have been proud to welcome them to their new hometown as neighbors with open arms. Really, as parents, all we needed were our eyes to communicate that all we really want is the best for our kids. This is the attitude most everyone I know has as well. I didn't need a law telling me that I couldn't ask questions to know that our neighbors deserve dignity, respect, and an education for their children that was free of prejudice. I thought this was the attitude of our board, and I honestly believed that it was until the last election. And now I find it my duty to make sure that our board understands this is the expectation. We may not always be out in force for every meeting, but we are paying attention. We are involved parents, and we care about all the students of Oxford Area School District receiving a free education. In continuing my focus on equitable education for all, I'd like to ask you to seriously consider the impact any changes to our current health and safety plan may have on our ability to receive much needed ESSERS Grant 3 funding. I understand that we heard the results of the online survey from stakeholders about how that funding could be used. But I'm curious about what other means of surveying our parents, how our parents feel about health and safety have taken place. For instance, has a survey been taken of students who continue to voluntarily mask at school? I think it could pretty easily be done just with homeroom teachers. I had my 3 students do it. Well, I have 4 students, but getting my 2nd grader to count kids in his class and remember it by the time he got home wasn't happening. My 5th grader had 70% of her class continuing to mask. My 9th grader, out of the 87 out of 122 students in her classes were masking, that's 71%. My 10th grader had 53%, and if I pull them all together, it was about 62% for my students, my children, and the exposure that they're having at school with masks. Since an online survey is only as good as the engagement it receives, I hope that you'll consider doing your own formal study of how our students, and by extension their families, feel about masking, health, and safety. From what my family has observed, it appears as though the majority of our students are still choosing to wear masks. So while the people not in favor of taking common sense safety measures during a pandemic may loudly object and come out in stronger numbers to speak against it, I wonder if this simple survey would give you a better glimpse into the minds of our entire student body and their families. We are not a school district that's able to turn away additional funding, as has been highlighted in the current Pennsylvania Supreme Court Fair Education Funding Lawsuit, which identifies our school district among the top 100 underfunded school districts in the state. Now, I personally don't care about test scores, but for those that do, I'd say that our poor funding is a much greater factor in test scores than a few immigrant children deserving of an education. It is also immediately actionable, as we can receive this funding just by maintaining a health and safety plan. Please don't let the loud few take this funding away from our schools. I see this money as a way to free up our budget so we can get some of those wish list items.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Elizabeth Louise.
Good evening, Mr. Ty and board. I'm Elizabeth Louise. I reside in Upper Oxford. I'm currently a sophomore at the high school. I've been a student of the district since kindergarten. I've never heard anyone say anything like what Ms. Keys said. At the board meeting on January 18th, I can proudly say that my peers have all been accepting of new students every year. Sometimes teachers need to slow down to explain things to other students, but that's not always because of the language barrier. Often, I am the student holding up the class because I need extra help, instruction, or explanation, but I won the birthplace lottery being born in this town, so my need for extra help does not seem to concern you. None of my peers have ever shown frustration at mine or any other student's need for assistance. Since the unfound comment that Ms. Keys made publicly at the board meeting and showcased on the social media, there has been a divide in our school. Students seem emboldened to make horrific comments about our Latinx students that they have never made before. Prior to the last few weeks, I have never heard any of these comments from a student, teacher, or board member in my 11 years of going to Oxford Area School District. Frankly, I'm appalled by the remarks Ms. Keys made about some of the students attending our school district, including that accidental slip-up she made during the February 8th meeting, repeating these students again. With a smirk on her face, I'm personally privileged to be attending school with every one of my peers. I can't imagine being put in the position that Ms. Keys has placed many families of this district. All children deserve an education, no matter what. In closing, I'd like to note that I'll be a voting age in 2 years, and want to thank two of our most newly elected board members for teaching me the importance of participating in every election and getting to know each candidate before I head out to the polls. Like Lizzie Evans Ralston, I'm opted out of standardized testing, so I have to receive zeros on all of those test scores. Thank you.
Charles Vicky?
Of Oxford, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. An Oxford Area School District board member has disparaged homeless children as illegals, blamed them for low district rankings, and sought to memorialize these types of derogatory terms in policies meant to protect them. These stereotype threats have detrimental effects on students' performance and well-being. Based on 35 years of raising a family here, the 73,000 people to date who have petitioned for the board member's resignation are the people who overwhelmingly reflect our community. The U.S. Supreme Court in Plyler versus Doe disproved 40 years ago the myth that children who are not legally admitted into the United States negatively impact the quality of education for other students. Found that every child in the United States, regardless of legal status, is a protected person under the 14th Amendment, and found that the deprivation of education takes an inestimable toll on the social, economic, intellectual, and psychological well-being of the individual, and poses an obstacle to an individual's achievement. Again, the education system is central to a child's well-being. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, behind District Policy 7320, guarantees equal access to public education for homeless students. The district served 112 homeless students in the 2019-20 school year, up from 111 students the prior year, the highest numbers in the decade. The only focus of Policy 7320 on tonight's agenda should be to provide students with every opportunity to succeed. There should be no confusion about district rankings relative to race, ethnicity, disability, primary language, or socioeconomic status. As stated earlier, the Pennsylvania Department of Education publishes performance assessments within each of these subgroups for every district and school in the state. Our district of just over 27,000 people includes an established and growing Hispanic population. 1 in 6 district residents are Hispanic, 1 in 3 Oxford Borough residents are Hispanic. Please remain focused on the mission of the Oxford Area School District to have all students achieve academic excellence in a safe and nurturing environment. Reject and expose stereotypical misinformation presented in the guise of inquisitiveness. Thank you.
Lopez.
Hello. Hi to everyone here tonight. My name is Gloria Stephanie Lopez. Most people know me as Stephanie. I'm a resident of East Nottingham Township, and I have a child in the district, and soon it will be 2 children. So recently, I came across a quote that in reality, I believe summarizes what we're discussing today at hand. And that quote was, "Anything blocking our community from education is an enemy to our progress." I'll say it again. Anything blocking our community from education is an enemy to our progress. So Ms. Keys, and to anyone on the board for that matter that shares the same xenophobic views and decides to block any child from an education and thus the progress of our community, is our enemy. I would like to remind you that the United States Supreme Court issued a decision in Plyer versus Doe in 1982 that declared states cannot deny students a free public education on the account of their immigration status. The ruling was based upon the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. The court reasoned that resources saved by excluding undocumented children from schools were far outweighed by the harm to America's progress. That, Ms. Keys, and to the board, is the law. Neither you or I or anyone in the audience, for that matter, is above the law. It is the United States way and what America stands for. You may not exclude an immigrant child, legal or, in your words, illegal, from entering our district. You and the board are prevented from releasing student education records, including information about their immigration status. And this is all under the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. And since you'd like to do research, you could have done that research. Anyway, referring back to my initial quote, the definition of an enemy, Ms. Keys and the board, is a person who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. And Ms. Keys, or should I say Mr. Keys, you have shown your hostility toward a group of children time and time again, not only through your words, but through your actions, through social media posts, and also a few other of you guys, but I'm not gonna go there. Your responsibility is to act on behalf of all children in our district. And there is a lot to desire for how you have fulfilled your position as of right now. Today, Mrs. Keys and the board, as you place your eyes upon the audience, realize that you have more adversaries than you do have allies. Today, I will wrap up my speech by letting you know that this will not simply die down as you have been quoted. The community has too much to lose by letting you remain in a position that oversees the welfare of all children in our community. I ask you today again, Ms. Keys, to resign from your position. Take a step back and realize the damage that you have already done to our community.
Personnel, Mr. Woods.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend the attached list of professional personnel.
Do I have a motion to approve the attached list of professional personnel? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Non-professional, Mr. Woods.
I recommend the attached list of non-professional personnel.
Motion to accept the attached list of non-professional personnel. Second. Any discussion? All All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Volunteers, Mr. Woods?
I recommend the attached list of volunteers.
Do I have a motion to approve the attached list of volunteers?
Motion.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda. Be it resolved that the Oxford Area Board of School Directors hereby approves the following consent agenda items. Section 1302 students named on the attached list to be considered resident of the school district for the 2021-2022 school year in accordance with Section 1302 of the Public School Code. High School Course Selection Guide. Approval of the course selection guides for Oxford Area High School for the 2022-23 school year as per attached. Oxford Area High School 10 to 12, Oxford Area High School incoming 9th grade. 2022-2023 school calendar. Approval of the 22-23 school year calendar. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We move to section D, so on to section E, health and safety plan. Be it resolved that the Oxford Area Board of School Directors hereby approves the draft changes to the district health and safety plan template for the ARPESSER fund, American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. Do I have a motion? Discuss it after the motion. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Discussion.
So I have a comment to make on the health and safety plan. The revisions in this document, I believe, still are not adequate. The fact that this money has strings attached to it remains a problem. Are we prepared to have the government dictate to us what we can do in our district? Is this really the best choice for our students? I know that in this plan, we are allowing the Chester County Health Department or the state, if they decide to relinquish their rights to the state, to choose what is best for the children in this district, the students in this district, rather than giving that right to the parents. I still feel strongly that we should not be accepting this money in exchange for our students' rights or freedoms. We as board members took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, and as far as I know, the Constitution still stands for freedom. The freedom of our students should never be for sale, no matter how much is promised by the government.
I am in favor of the plan, but I would like to see some changes to the plan. Specifically, there's 3 changes that I would like to propose and have put forth. One is under section 1, LEA governing body will, it currently says authorize the chief school administrator to implement the approved plan, excuse me, to coincide with changes by the Chester County Department of Health as needed. And I had requested to strike out and have it read as the LEA governing body will implement the approved changes by the Chester County Department of Health as needed. And what that does is it keeps the board in charge of any changes that need to happen. My second proposal is under A, 3A, which is universal and correct wearing of masks. Currently we have 2, 3, 4, almost 5 pages of things that we say we will do, in starting with mask face coverings must be worn by all non-students. school staff, visitors, and it goes on. And my proposal to change that is in line with one of the other districts in our county, which the wording can be, again, tweaked either way, but it says, where required by law, proper masking and face shield can be used and discussed with those wearing such on school property and on buses. And obviously, the question that I've received on the buses is, it is a mandate currently, even though that we have removed it as a mandate within the school and have left it up to the parents. And my goal behind this is to do the same. I'd like to see the parents be able to control, unless there's a law mandating it for us, the parents to have that choice on whether or not they put a mask on their child. And the way that this is written currently, as long as it's recommended, we would then or could be locked in as other districts in our county currently are. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Oxford, up until today, was the only one, Dr. Rare right? Was the only one that had removed the masking mandate and gave the parents the choice back in December. And I believe that now there are other districts doing such, Avon Grove, Kennett, Unionville, on the 28th of February. So I'm not really sure what the magic date there is, but again, I'm in favor of the parents making that choice. The other recommendation change that I have is under putting the vaccination clinic in the school, excuse me. And my recommendation there was the LEA will provide information regarding off-site clinics providing medical care, excuse me, for those that inquire. Any emergency use of OASD facilities in no way assumes any implied consent by any individual. And then there's another addition. To that, and I don't know if we can go tonight, but the other one is an Avon Grove piece that basically states that there'll be no mandate excuse me one second, just gotta find it. Okay. Vaccinations for staff and students will not be required for attendance or employment. So I think that kind of covers that piece. And then the last one was the physical distancing. It just kind of cleans up the verbiage that's there already. It says any physical distancing required by law be followed by the district to the fullest extent possible to allow continuation of in-person learning. So they were the proposed changes that I would like to put through.
Mr. Baxter, the changes that you requested, where required by law in a couple of these situations, you say where required by law, proper masks maybe can be used or what have you, can be discussed.
This is up for discussion, which is why we're doing this. So if that's something that you want to put forth.
I have one other suggested change, and it's under item 3G, where you're talking about the emergency use of Oxford area school district facilities in no way assumes implied consent by any individual. I think it should also say, and shall not be available for vaccination purposes during normal school hours. Under no circumstances shall vaccines be administered to students under the age of 18 without both parents or legal guardians present.
Currently under PA law, implied consent is not allowed. There has to be parental consent, so that's covered. The reason that I put the implied consent piece there under the emergency use of the facility is because there's different governance when there's an emergency, and I just wanted to cover any confusion there. But as far as regular school day or under regular law, that's not possible. If I can here, I just want to read it. Here's some language that's currently in another district in our county. It's in their approved plan for those that may be concerned that the verbiage being recommended may put it in jeopardy. And the verbiage under the universal and correct wearing of masks, it says masks will be required if required by law or governmental directive. When masks are required by law or governmental directive, the district will comply with all applicable requirements of such law or government directive. So I think that kind of covers and ensures that that verbiage has been accepted. So I think we have an argument if they choose not to accept our verbiage, that it's already been accepted in another district's health and safety plan. Yeah, if you want to continue. The request of Mr. Woods, I'll read the rest of what's under this. It says, additionally, medical guidance issued by the Chester County Health Department, PA Department of Education, and/or CDC will be strongly considered when determining whether masks will be required. The administration is authorized to implement, this is where their piece is down here that I wanted to recommend the change up on the front end. That says the administration is authorized to implement the health department, PA Health Department, or Chester County Health Department's guidance as applicable. Face coverings will be available for staff and students, although individuals are expected to provide their own. Information related to proper mask etiquette will be shared to assure the mouth and nose are covered with no gaps between the face and masks. Mask breaks for students will be provided in accordance with CDC, PA Department of Health, Education, should the district adopt a mask optional approach. Unvaccinated staff will be required to wear masks and commit to weekly antigen testing. So that's not stuff that I'm recommending. That's the first part of that. Because that doesn't have anything to do with this. Yeah, the circle to here. None of the antibody testing.
So I just still want to make one more point, is that I think we really should think about where we reference the Chester County Department of Health. During this pandemic, the Chester County Department of Health gave up their rights to the state. And I think that that's important to understand when we put that in here, that the reason why we couldn't make a different decision, even if we wanted to, was that the Chester County Department of Health had relinquished their rights.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying that I would strike through the Chester County Department of Health, where you have it listed in the document. I would not include the Chester County Department of Health as the source for our decision making. And the reason for that is because during the pandemic, they gave up their rights to the state, and it was no longer a decision made by the Chester County Department of Health.
Mr. Woods, do these changes that we're looking at, do you think that they jeopardize the funding?
So, to be clear, that's what Mr. Patterson and I were discussing. What's proposed in green in a change, I think needs to go further in most of what you read. And I believe that under masking would be fine. As far as the grant funding is concerned, because again, I want to point out to you at the top column of 3A, where it says ARPS a requirement, universal and correct wearing of masks, strategies, policies, and procedures for that. So I need some strategies and procedures. Whether we're wearing them or not is not the issue. The issue is the second, if you were to look at the language in green, it needs to go further, in my estimation, to include what that other school district included. Alternatively, as I made my recommendations over the last several months, I believe it could include the language, although more verbose, in what we have in our plan right now. And again, that's not, if we follow the history within these health and safety plans, the Oxford Area School District made masking recommended to start the school year and came under a mandate and then went back to masking required. And when that mandate was lifted by the Supreme Court in December, we reverted back to the health and safety plan. So there's no point in time that we did not follow our health and safety plan because we were recommending masks. Now, to capitulate, it is verbose. It is taking into account all facets of if a mandate were to come back on, or a lawfully called mandate were to come back on. And this, I believe, hits all the boxes for the grant and for a comprehensive health and safety plan. Again, I would capitulate that in 3A, under universal and correct wearing of masks, the additional language that Mr. Patterson read should be included rather than just the green language that was added to this draft. Because that then gives us a strategy and a procedure. Whereas the current language just required by law, proper face and shields discussed with those wearing on school property would not give us those strategies and procedures. It's just a discussion, and I believe that could be kicked back based on, we're going to discuss it with you rather than give you the proper instruction on how to wear it, et cetera, as Mr. Patterson read into the record. Again, just that first part, not the other part about vaccines and antigen testing. So, if you could understand what I'm stating there, if I go through each change, I have no issue with the LEA governing body implementing an improved plan. If you don't want myself to have the ability to implement a mandate without calling a meeting, that's fine. It's just, we give 3 days notice and call a meeting and sit here and go over the plan. Beautiful. As far as distancing, in B, any physical distancing required by law can be followed by the district to the fullest extent possible, allowing the continuation of personal learning. Again, I agree with that statement. However, that doesn't give me a strategy or procedure. And that's why we list the 3 to 6 feet, etc. So, are you following my logic on this? When devising it, I need to check all those boxes off to be successful in this application. The next change is under E in contact tracing. Again, I believe we kept in collaboration with Chester County Department of Health and just struck and follow plan any lawfully required reporting to Chester County. I believe that's fine. In G, again, I believe that's fine. LEA provide information regarding off-site clinics providing medical. We don't have to be involved in an on-site clinic. So I don't see any problem with that changing. And then I, coordination with state and local health officials. I think that would need to be changed just a hair. OASD may consider all lawful recommendations from state and local or state and health officials when implementing the plan. I'm not sure you want to say may consider all lawful recommendations, because a lawful mandate, for example, we would have to do. So I would suggest maybe some language changes there. And again, even if that later is called off by the Supreme Court, that's the judicial process at work. But we're under that mandate until said judicial process comes to a conclusion. Again, just to state, if you want to reduce some of the language in the plan, that's not, if we add some of the language, I think it will be successful. As I recommended over the last several board meetings, I don't recommend a change to it because I think it's all encompassing. Well, it could be confusing, but I've made those statements known each time I do it.
So just so we're clear.
I just want to clarify, in regards to some of the other districts, they adopted it, so, and just to be clear here, I know some folks have said that I approved the plan, didn't know I actually did my research before speaking and joining the board, like some others haven't done on this board. So before coming to board, I can tell you that most districts adopted the plan from the CCIU. In that plan, it talked about masking based off of the different levels of infection in the county. We did not. If you look at the plan that the other board members adopted, it's minuscule compared to what other districts have. I don't feel comfortable taking bits and pieces out of what they have and saying that we're doing what they are, because we're not. We've essentially redlined this whole document, and we've put in purposeful ambiguity here, as Mr. Woods has noted, to say may. Like, I'm okay with the whole parental choice thing. If you want to wear a mask, you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine. But if we should put in here, recommended and put in the procedures. If you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine. If there's a federal mandate you have to do on transportation, put it in here. But all I see here is red flags. And frankly, Ms. Keys, if you don't want to adopt this, then don't have any say in it. We should go to executive committee under the guise of safety, work this damn thing out. And Ms. Keys, if you don't want to come because you just want to redline the whole damn thing, then don't show up. We come when we vote on it. Talked about it earlier in this meeting. There's students who sat here the other day who talked about, instead of all this, they walked through, the one student, I walked through the hallway and I see trash cans collecting water, bathrooms not working, fights in the hallway. We're not addressing any of that because of this bullshit that she brought up. We'll work this thing out, and not because, guys, we can't work this out tonight. The public hasn't seen it. They don't know that. public, and the next meeting we vote on it. And then we move on, and we start focusing on some things to help this school, and to fix some of those test scores that we just saw that frankly, they are declining. I'm like, guys, I came from another board, from another district, and I'm completely frustrated. We're not getting anything done. Anything. I'm done.
Any further discussion?
Sorry, real quickly, I just would like to say that the comments that I made, they did come from input from the community. They were emailed to the whole board, I believe. So I just want to be clear that the items that I'm raising are not just my personal changes. These are revisions that were informed by the community as per this plan.
You can save your national politics and partisan politics for outside this district.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the health and safety plan. Do I have a motion? Second? The discussion, as far as I see it, is that we should actually have a special meeting, sit down, as Mr. Claus has presented, get this thing ironed out, release it for public comment, and then we can vote on it in a meeting after that. That sounds like a very wise course of action to take. That's my area of discussion. Is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion to table on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Oh, yeah. All right, thank you. Policy revisions, second reading. Mr. Woods.
Thank you. This is the second permutation of the policy. 7320 homeless students. Up for discussion.
This is not something that we're voting on this evening. This is merely just a discussion on changes or comments to the second reading of policy number 7320. Any discussion?
I think the only thing that I would like to raise is that this particular policy was not edited within the guidelines of our policy revision schedule. I know that it was stated that it was done based on the audit that was conducted. But what I wanted to understand was what is the urgency of getting this done now when the audit was done back in April of 2021? I guess I just was wondering if it was so urgent to do, why wasn't it done following that audit?
So we brought it in front of the policy committee in a timely fashion as we worked through all the nuances of the recommendation. And I'm uncertain, I don't have it in front of me right now, when we actually received the recommendations from the federal auditor. It may have been that the audit was conducted in April of 2021. Until we received the actual recommendations, could have been later. And I'm unclear what that date is, but we'll look to find that date. And then obviously we recess for the July, the month of July. And then we have September, October, November And I'm, again, unclear when we received those recommendations. But it was up for second reading at our January meeting. We don't do any business at the reorganization in December. So that means it would have been up for the first reading at the November meeting. So it seems to me that if it was completed in April, we probably received it November, and I've gone through making the additions to the existing policy and got it in front of the board in a timely fashion. So we'll get those dates for you, Mrs. Speaks.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to know, why do we have a policy revision schedule if we revise policies outside of that schedule?
Okay, good question. So we have a policy revision schedule that takes each broad section of our policy over the years. So it may be the 4,000 series in any given year, the 5,000 series, or the 6,000 series. And each year we go through and look to revise any of those policies. So that's one thing. Second answer is that any time throughout the year, we can pick and choose policies like the homeless policy to revise after we receive input from auditors. Or some of our other policies, there may be a mandate at the state that has changed, or policy guidance from an organization that has changed, or a law that may have changed, that we need to then go and edit our policies. And when we edit the actual policy, it takes 3 readings. If we edit administrative procedures of policy, it just takes 1 reading. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion about policy 7320? Copy of the policies listed is available at the administrative building on 25 Belltower Lane, Oxford, PA, for examination and comment. Policies can be viewed on the website at www.oxfordasd.org. Public is encouraged to stop in and read these policies before visiting the website. Closing items, correspondence, Mr. Cooney? We have none. Any changes to the calendar before I go through it? Tuesday, March 8th, Facilities and Safety Committee, 6 p.m. Administrative Building. Tuesday, March 8th, Athletics and Student Activities Committee, 6:15 p.m. Administrative Building. Tuesday, March 8th, Policy Committee, 6:30 p.m. Administrative Building. Tuesday, March 8th, 2022 Work Session, 7 p.m. Administrative Building. Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 Budget and Finance Committee, 6:30 p.m. Administrative Building. Tuesday, March 25th, 2022 Regular Meeting, 7 p.m. Administrative Building. I'd like to, does anybody, we be okay to have a executive session after the meeting on March 8th to discuss this health and safety plan? So we can get something done? Anybody have any issues with that, or can we all attend? Yes. Executive session March 8th, hopefully right around 8 p.m. Administrative building. Follow-up to community questions and concerns, Mr. Cooney. Adjournment, do I have a motion? Second. Meeting's adjourned. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Hold on. Thank you, everyone. Here. Jim wants to say hi. Dinesh is on there.
Who's that?
Oh,
sorry.
hold on.
I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You're looking at yourself. You're looking at that.
Hold on.
Hi, everyone.
right, thank you guys.